Okay, good morning. Welcome to our webcast this morning. We are going to talk about how to keep your cargo safe for the 2025 holiday season. We're going to give you some tips and we're going to talk about some best practices. I am joined by my learned colleague and good friend, Danny Ramone. Danny, welcome this morning.
Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
So, 2025 holiday season. Holiday season is always that fascinating time. There's sort of 12 weeks of the year where for the US retail in particular, it is the busiest shipping time of the year for consumer electronics, for all of those new gifts for Christmas coming in, and of course everybody's in a rush to get things on shelf before Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So it is a very concentrated effort. A little bit strange this year just because of the impact that we've seen from tariffs. And what has that meant? It has meant that there has been some front loading of inventory into the US being held in different facilities up and down the East Coast and the West Coast, which of course means a little bit of a crush in terms of over the road for these last few weeks. But it's going to be another bumper season, Danny. And from your perspective, your job, you watch all of this all of the time. You're trying to figure out, how the thieves are working, where they're going to be, and how to keep people's cargo safe. What are you most concerned about coming into this? Well, we're not coming in. We're already in holiday season. What are you most concerned about this year?
Gosh, most concerned about where do I start, right? The past several years, we've seen the emergence of a new fraudulent theft method or MO developed during the holiday seasons. Typically, the industry at large doesn't really become aware of them until after the holiday season. So, probably sometime in January, we'll be hearing about the new fraudulent theft method that took place over the last several months, probably already taking place now. In most cases, they're just a reorganization and a restacking, a reordering of the two dozen different MOs that they use already. And they'll just kind of rearrange them in a different order or in a slightly different configuration that it basically will exploit some blind spots, right?
Right.
Beyond that, as you mentioned, with all the front loading of cargo coming in from the tariff uncertainty and things, we expect to definitely see an explosion again in large scale pilferage, especially along all the states that are departing from California eastbound. So Arizona, New Mexico. In the past couple months, we've seen the large scale pilferage activity kind of reconcentrate in California because a lot of the cargo was kind of stuck there as it was coming in that front loading operation you were mentioning. But we also expect to see an increase in targeting of facilities, distribution centers, and warehouses, because as you mentioned, the amount of cargo that's going to be in those is going to be much higher than it is typically.
So again, for this holiday season, I think it's a little bit of a shift from a traditional year that we've seen before, just because there is much more inventory stateside already. But there's a couple of worrying trends that we've seen, and we've done a lot of work on this as well. There's double brokerage and there's fraudulent pickups. So let's start with double brokerage. Just explain in simplest terms, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so when we talk about double brokerage in supply chain security, we're talking about double brokerage you don't know about and you have not authorized, right? And double brokerage is basically saying, I've contracted carrier A or broker A to take my freight from point A to point B. Then that carrier or broker, they have to be a broker if they're going to rebroker it legally. But we do see it often happen with carriers who don't have broker authority will double broker it out. They'll call carrier company M and say, hey, we'll give you 90% of what our contract is in order to take it from A to B. And of course, they're not saying 90%, right? But it goes down the line and people will just broker it out further and further to other people who maybe have things going that way already, or for whatever reason are more operationally able to do that quicker, cheaper, whatever it is. Now, that's something that is very commonplace and in a lot of cases is legal, that happens in the supply chain and logistics industry, but it is not secure because of the amount of hands that your cargo is passing through. If there's any chain of custody issues, that obviously becomes very hairy. And then, of course, when we're talking about it, we're talking about illicit double brokering, which is when you don't know about it, and very likely the people who are brokering it out don't have the authority to do so. So it is illegal in that case. And while it may be viewed as a civil matter by a lot of law enforcement, it can lead all the way up to a loss of entire loads, not just one load, but dozens of loads in some cases.
And that is the real danger. The real danger is, in your supply chain, it's a busy time of year. You're trying to move a lot of things. It's very easy for carriers to double broker, and then those double brokers actually double brokering again. And so you start to get into, the lower levels of the supply chain, and that is inherently risky. It just means that you're adding additional risk to your already precarious cargo, if you like. And so what can companies do? How can companies make sure that this doesn't happen, or what is it that they can actually put forward as, safety measures to try and prevent it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, because if you don't know it's a problem, you can't address it, right? And a lot of folks don't realize that double brokering is a problem in their network until a shipment goes missing, and then they're trying to investigate it and dig through the multiple layers of brokering and rebrokering and find out who actually had it, who was in control of the shipment when it was stolen, et cetera. So really the key is visibility, because like I said, if you don't know what's happening, you can't stop it.
Right.
Visibility, remote compliance monitoring is just about the only way to spot it if it's happening without your knowledge. And we're pretty adept at that. Every day, John Cannon and Bobby Motley and I will be on a Zoom call and we'll look at this and be like, yeah, this is the pattern of behavior of double brokering. We see it happen all the time, and it's one of those things that it's difficult to stop without granular visibility into your supply chain.
Right. And what is that pattern? So when you say, you're talking about the patterns, what is that pattern that you see?
The pattern is typically a stop very quickly after departure from origin. That stop is usually going to be at another truck yard or carrier yard. There's various sensors that we utilize as well, and in reading some of those sensors, we can tell whether or not the shipment if the trailer's been opened, if maybe that the cargo's been transloaded into a warehouse or into another container or trailer, and then of course, just knowing who some of these bad actors are, where they operate, all of these things. It's a layered approach. It's not just like, well, this is how you can tell. A lot of it is, you have to know what you're looking at. You have to have had experience in this. It's unfortunately not something I can just like write a couple of bullet points and be able to teach people how to do. I wish I could.
Well, if we could, it would be easy, and then everybody could do it, Danny. And that's kind of that is the point. But it comes down a little bit to understanding the patterns, to be able to understand, from the visibility, what's actually going on. And this goes back to the point of, this isn't just about dots on a map. This is actually understanding what is happening in every single stage of a cargo's journey, how to interpret some of those signals to actually form, what is forming a pattern to say you may have a double brokerage problem or even worse. So that's double brokerage. Thank you for that. The other thing that I know we're very concerned about right now is fraudulent pickups. So again, just give me the high level explanation of a fraudulent pickup.
Okay, so fictitious pickups is what we used to call them, right? Because by and large, the only kind of strategic theft that we were encountering was fictitious pickup, which is the least sophisticated type of strategic theft that we deal with now. And that was usually somebody showing up at an origin location several hours before the legitimate driver was supposed to show up. This person would have enough information to convince the dock that they were the legitimate driver and that they just wanted to get out of there a little bit early, maybe before rush hour. And they'd get loaded and they would leave, and then the proper driver would show up, and then that's when people would realize what's going on. Now we're dealing with, much more sophisticated types of strategic theft. We're dealing with folks who realize that, hey, investing $10,000 to vinyl wrap a tractor so it's cloned and looks just like this big national carrier tractor, the ROI on that for me is going to be huge. So I will invest $10,000 in that, or there's just so many different things that they can do. It's really getting kind of scary. So strategic theft is really just, to put it in a smaller bucket, is stealing cargo under the guise of doing legitimate business, right? And the biggest problem with that, A, is the delay in notification for the victim, and B, the difficulty in enforcing that with law enforcement, because many times, as I mentioned already, they can see that as a civil issue, which has to be dealt with in a court with a judge, rather than a criminal issue, which a law enforcement officer can intervene in.
And this sophistication in the criminal fraternity, It's something that isn't talked about an awful lot, but we are seeing just this incredible amount of, I think you're right. I think it's investment in terms of, doctoring a truck to make it look like one of the major carriers. And then again, it's a busy dock door, it's a busy warehouse, it's a busy time of year. It's very easy to say, well, it looks like, carrier X. It feels like carrier X. It must be legitimate, and then let it go. But this huge shift from opportunistic theft to organized crime. And this is something that we continually preach about in the industry, but it is concerning. Like this is not the stopping the driver and handing over a brown envelope full of cash like my favorite Goodfellas scene. This is now real organized crime whereby DOT numbers are being doctored. We're changing license plate, even painting trucks to cover over markings just to be able to go in and actually do that fictitious pickup. Is that? I mean, is it that's at that scale already?
Yes, it absolutely is. Now, some of the examples that we're looking at on screen right now are some of the earlier, less sophisticated, easier to spot methods of remarking a trailer, right? We're talking about painting over or duct taping over the original markings and spray painting new numbers on there, using packing tape or scotch tape to, put up a piece of paper that's been written on with Sharpie marker. But yeah, we are absolutely seeing these methods and the much more sophisticated methods already. And what's scary is that, as you mentioned, these folks are very organized. They've built in tradecraft and experience, and they gather their own intelligence, right? But they came from the opportunistic criminal world, right? So they still have those senses about them, right? And
Right.
they know that the opportunity is coming when everybody wants to realize revenue by shipping things off of the dock door as soon as possible in Q4. They know that the opportunity is there. The first thing to hit the wayside is the first corner to be cut is almost always going to be security. So I would definitely expect to see some of these more simple red flags at your origin facilities this holiday season. But you still need to also be aware that some more sophisticated ones will be coming your way as well. It always helps to know exactly who you're dealing with and be able to verify who you're dealing with.
And just so everyone's aware, like this is not a concentrated problem. This is widespread. We have seen instances of this right across the country.
Yeah. And what's worse about that is there's parts of the country that have not really ever experienced cargo theft in any measurable volume. And the first thing that they're seeing when it comes to cargo theft is some of these more sophisticated, more technologically adept methods of strategic theft. So they're not just dipping their toe in the pool and like, oh, now we've got a couple of stolen full truckloads or a couple of pilferages. No, the first time they experience cargo theft is 4 dozen strategic thefts in the span of a week. So they're striking hard, they're striking fast, and they're going where they know that the defenses are lacking.
That is incredible. And so again, what can we do about this, Danny? What are some of the best practices?
So best practices, again, make sure these are some of the simple ones, but again, they will capture more than you think that they would. Making sure that the driver and the CDL match, right? If some guy shows up and presents to you a license that says he's 5'11" and 210 pounds, but you look at him and he's 5'6" and maybe 150 soaking wet, that's not his ID, right? We talk about one of the hot topics in the news lately, which I'm glad it's in the news, but it took them over a year. Is the driver's licenses with the first or last name, no name given, right? Everyone thinks that it is absolutely a big deal and something we need to be looking at. If you're not going to just outright turn those licenses away, ask for an alternate form of identification. Make sure the name matches. If the name matches, or if the name doesn't match, turn them away. Definitely look for any signs of temporary signage or remarking. This is more than just spray paint and duct tape, right? A common one is a magnetic placard. Again, common and legal, but not always secure. So if you see a magnetic placard, take a look at the front of the tractor. If the license plate for the tractor is also zip tied and at chest height, definitely look a little bit deeper, because to me what that indicates is the magnetic placard is being switched out multiple times a day and the license plate is being switched out multiple times a day, and they don't even want to bend down in order to switch out that license plate. They're going to do it while they're standing up, right? Right. Another thing, make sure you're looking at the license plates. Every state, virtually every state, has specific formats of the combinations of letters and numbers that apply only to commercial vehicles. And when these folks are swapping out license plates, they're usually not swapping out from their fleet of 12 different commercial vehicles. They're going to swap out with their Honda Civic, and so you can tell if you know what you're looking for, you can tell if the license plate is a passenger vehicle or a commercial vehicle. So make sure that that's on your checklist as well.
Right. I mean, those are all great points. At the end of the day, though, it's still, there's an element of this which is it is better to be suspicious than not. I mean, we always say prevention is the best cure, and it's a time of year just because there is a huge surge in volume. There's a lot of shipments going out, but this is the time of year when you do have to be more cautious, where you do have to be a little bit more suspicious, and it's better to turn away a driver than lose a load. It is kind of my guiding principle there.
100%. I mean, Barry says it all the time. We consider a recovery a loss. Now, being on the recovery team, I consider it at least half a win. But I 100% get and agree with his point that it is worlds easier to prevent a theft than it is to recover stolen cargo. And I mean, this is not new wisdom, right? I mean, the saying goes back, I don't know how long, that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that applies in security so much. It is so accurate when it comes to the security world.
Okay, so we've talked about double brokerage. We've talked about fictitious pickups. Is there anything else that's sort of top of mind for you that you say, hey, here's a new worrying trend that we're seeing?
Yeah, there's a large contingent of folks that are practicing large scale pilferage across the country. They've also taken the time to reinvest into their operations in terms of hardware and equipment and training and personnel and intelligence gathering. And they continue to perform large scale pilferages because of the decreased law enforcement pursuit and investigation that involves, as compared to when you steal the entire tractor trailer, right? If you're a truck driver and you're driving on the I-40 in Arizona, and you come out from the truck stop and somebody's emptied your trailer, you call the cops. The cops are going to come. They're going to take a report. They're going to say, well, do you know where it is? You don't know where it is. Do you know what it's in? You don't know what it's in. Cool. Here's your theft report number. Bye. If they steal the tractor trailer, they show up, the law enforcement shows up, they take the report and they say, okay, let me put out a bolo for, a red Freightliner with license plate this and a yellow trailer with these markings, etc. But if they don't know what vehicle it's in, it obviously reduces the chance that they're going to be able to pursue. So we are seeing large scale pilferage be a big driver of increase across cargo theft in the United States and Canada. And another thing I do want to bring up, I'm always warning people, I do want to caveat that it's not increasing at the same rate. It's not increasing nearly as steeply as all cargo theft, but we are seeing increases in driver confrontation and driver violence in the commission of cargo theft. But the good thing about this is this actually does have that magic bullet that everybody wants in the security world, that one thing that you can do that will reduce the lion's share of your risk for this particular type of theft. And that is, please don't have your drivers park outside of their destination facilities overnight. Please have them arrive when their appointment to drop off is due, especially if those areas are places you wouldn't want to be walking around after dark. I mean, I think we're all pretty aware industrial areas are not necessarily the best neighborhoods, but we all also know the most notorious of those across the country, right? Lamar Avenue between Memphis and Olive Branch, Fulton Industrial Boulevard off of Atlanta, anything in South Chicago. We just recommend that in general, not just in these places, but in general, shipments do not arrive at the destination until their appointment time, and that they stay, if they're running early, they stage 50 to 100 miles away in a secure location.
Right. And there is an element of common sense here. And I think that, from a shipper perspective, there are protocols. I think it is important for the shippers to also to push those protocols through their supply chain, especially at this time of year. And while it may be seen as time consuming, it may be seen as, you could create delays. Again, it's more, prevention is the cure. In this case, prevention is absolutely the cure. And taking those times and enforcing those protocols through your logistics network is actually one of the most critical things that anybody can do right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when it comes to fraud defense, it's a new game that we're playing now, right? When we're combating and trying to prevent strategic theft, and it requires more than the level of due diligence that you used to be able to do. When we were talking about earlier about fictitious pickups being the first type of strategic theft, and back in those days, all you had to do was one due diligence step. I mean, pretty much you could pick any due diligence step, do that particular due diligence action, and you would probably uncover the deception.
Right.
Now you can do most of those. You can make the $1 million phone call. You can check the driver's license. You can take a picture of the driver, and he's probably not going to get nervous. He's probably not going to run away. Or you can do all of the traditional due diligence steps and still be found lacking. So you really need to use additional tools, vet your carriers, vet your drivers. If at all possible, use two forms of authentication. Not only when they submit the carrier information packet, vetting the carrier and the information that's submitted, vet the actual physical entities that show up at your origin location. So verify them twice, not just who's supposed to show up, but who actually shows up. Make sure you know who you're doing business with. Obviously, we've got a solution for this. There's other solutions out there. I like ours. I've been building ours for a long time with John Cannon and Bobby Motley and Eddie Acosta and our very talented software development team, trying to program as much of our minds into this as possible. But of course, the methods evolve. So
right.
Use every tool available to you in order to know who you're doing business with, especially with your most sensitive cargo, and especially at the time of year when you're going to be shipping out faster than you'd care to.
Now, we've been doing this for a long time, so we've learned a few things, and we've understood some of our own patterns in this. When is cargo most at risk?
Cargo, well, once it's in transit, cargo at rest is cargo at risk, right? It can't be stolen if it doesn't stop. We're talking about pilferage and straight theft. So, once it leaves the dock doors, if it's stopped, that's when we're most worried about it. So that's when we need to have eyes on it and visibility into the condition of the cargo.
And we talk about red zones, and those red zones are typically focused around the origin and the destination, correct?
Yeah, it's usually 200 to 250 miles around the origin, based off of the most popular straight theft tactic of following the tractor trailer from origin. And if they don't get an opportunity to steal that tractor trailer, i.e. when it's left unattended and stationary, within the first 200 to 250 miles, typically they're going to turn around and wait for the next one to depart, hoping that one's going to be a little bit lower hanging fruit.
Right. And that's again, this is the mentality of the criminal, which is, they're obviously they're running their own time and resources as well. And they do see that opportune time in that 50 to 250 mile radius from the origin. That is, we call it the red zone. And we call it the red zone for a reason. That's one of the highest risk times for a driver making an unscheduled stop, even if it's just to check something. He could be being followed, and that's like an opportune, that's exactly what the criminals are looking for. They're looking for those simple, low-hanging fruit opportunities, right?
Exactly. And when we look at straight theft, within the red zone, that first 200 miles, depending on what part of the country you're in, again, based on what MOs are being practiced, what active cargo theft crews are in that particular region, your risk of theft goes up by 200% to 500% if you stop in the red zone versus if you stop outside of the red zone.
Right. So, Danny, we've got a couple of questions. I just want to make sure that we can just address these in the last few minutes that we have. One of the questions is from Lisa. She says, how do we get new shippers? How do we get the shippers to help combat this? Most say it's not their job to check. They don't understand that we aren't the ones loading these trucks.
Okay, well, I mean, it would help to understand what perspective that's coming from, who the we is. But really, I mean, that comes down to, contractual agreements and who holds liability. At that point, whoever holds liability is going to be the one who's going to be performing most of the security protocols in almost any scenario, whether it's cargo security or not.
Okay. There's a very interesting question here from Dina. She says, have you seen AI being utilized to combat some of these issues? So at Overhaul, we've developed our own solution called RiskGBT. And part of what RiskGBT actually does is look for those patterns across everything that's ever happened. So it looks at all of the incidents that have ever happened, and then gauges and says, okay, based on this carrier, based on this load, based on this route, we'll apportion a risk score and provide that to the shipper or the broker, just so that they understand, okay, is this a higher risk than we thought about? Is there an alternative route or alternative means of actually moving this? But as we start to see, that further evolution, if you like, of agentic AI, and we're leveraging it more in our product, the great thing is it's about, in our platform, we've got 6 billion data points. We're adding 150 million data points every month. And those data points are all relevant in terms of understanding the logistics network, understanding the mesh, understanding the incidents, and then being able to actually start carving out a predictive capability, which we hope in turn will actually help our customers think differently about this. So, I mean, that's why I would answer it. Danny, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
No, that's exactly correct. The one thing that I would add is on the flip side is to realize criminals are also utilizing AI to enhance and force multiply their efforts as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because again, when you think about the logistics network, unfortunately, there is a lot of information flowing that shouldn't be flowing. And so the criminal fraternity, again, they tend to know where the hotspots are. They tend to know where the high value products are, where they're being shipped from, and possibly, potentially where they're being shipped to. For consumer electronics, a lot of that comes into the West Coast ports. A lot of it goes out into distribution centers for the biggest retailers, and those are known entities. So again, from a shipper perspective, it's a case of there are protocols in place, follow those protocols, enforce those down through your supply chain in whatever way you can, because this time of year, everybody's watching, and the criminal fraternity are getting smarter at harvesting the data. Don't for one second think that they're not also building their own models to understand how freight networks are actually moving. And so you've got to understand, at Overhaul, we are always 2 steps ahead, and we have to spend a lot of time and energy keeping those 2 steps ahead, because the people that we're dealing with are also evolving over time as well. And to Danny's point, this is a very different industry than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. This has evolved, and technology plays a huge part in that evolution, not only from ourselves as a solution provider, but also from the criminals that we're actually working against. A question from Zach Hill. Zach, thanks for joining us today. Are there any gate management tools, techniques that could be utilized better in fraud prevention?
Fraud Watch, please and thank you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a number of them out there. Of course, I'm not as familiar with any of them as I am with Fraud Watch, which is our offering here at Overhaul. I do believe it to be the best. To my knowledge, it's the only one that offers 2-factor authentication, which again is verifying the information that you receive pre-arrival, and then verifying the physical entities, both driver, tractor, and trailer, that show up at your origin facility.
And okay, of course, Danny, part of our work on that particular part of our platform has been to make it as seamless as possible. We understand that everybody's trying to move fast. We understand that, we don't want, dock doors tied up at the busiest time of year. So we work really hard with the drivers and the operators to make that a seamless use case, and try and get people moving as quickly as possible. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do as well. Make sure that that cargo continues to flow. So to wrap it up, it's going to be a busy holiday season. There's going to be a lot of product moving. We've shared some of our thoughts in terms of what we're seeing. Watch out for double brokerage. Watch out for fictitious pickups. Remember that the criminals are working as fast as we are in terms of evolving and getting better at their own job. And then be thoughtful, be mindful. It's better to take time and cause a delay than to lose a load while it's in transit. Danny, any closing comments?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of cargo stolen in the next 75 days. Don't let it be yours.
I love that. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully this made sense. Please reach out to either Danny or myself, and we're more than happy to have a different conversation. Thank you so much.
Cheers, everyone.